In 1916, a grocer named Clarence Saunders faced brutal criticism for a crazy idea: letting customers pick their own groceries. Before Piggly Wiggly, which is the name of the chain of stores that Clarence Saunders founded, shopping meant waiting while clerks fetched items one by one from behind counters, haggling over prices and often waiting in long queues to be served. This is what the grocery industry at the time deemed to be convenience. But Saunders had a radical vision. True convenience meant empowering customers. Today's book review is about Piggly Wiggly and the inventor Clarence Saunders, and what Clarence Saunders did for the grocery industry, many innovations that we still use today. And I think very ironic at this point in time, where many retailers, especially in the drugstore category, are kind of going backwards, locking up inventory in locked cases and requiring customers to wait for a clerk to go and fetch an item for them. So my takeaways and my highlights from this book are all about innovation, being customer-centric and identifying what matters to customers, and finally, how macroeconomic factors have influenced the retail sector over time, and comparing what was happening during the early years of Piggly Wiggly to what is happening in our macroeconomic cycle right now. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Retail Media Breakfast Club, where there is always a latte to learn. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, and every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern, I bring you candid and real discussions in the world of retail media and marketplaces in just 10 minutes. But today it's Friday, and Fridays are a special edition of the show where I share my notes from a book that I've read that's relevant to retail. It might be the origin story of a retailer or a textbook on a business concept. Look, we don't always have time for reading as much as we want, but when you're a part of the Retail Media Breakfast Club, we get to copy each other's homework. So let's jump in to this week's book. So the first theme is how crazy innovation often looks when it first comes out. So I'll paint a picture of a grocery store back in 1916 for you. When customers entered the store, they would see clerks behind display counters and tables, and the shopper would give their shopping list to the clerk, who would go to the shelves in the rear of the store to fetch items one at a time, grinding coffee or slicing cheese or weighing items as needed. In this scenario, the prices weren't even standardized. There might be some haggling involved. Maybe a customer who was a friend of the clerk would get a better price than someone who wasn't a familiar customer. After all that, the clerk would add up the total, often on the back of a paper sack, and most stores offered charge accounts, so you wouldn't get charged right away. It'd be added to your total and you'd come and pay it eventually. And often there was a home delivery by horse and cart, which were essential services in retail at the time. That was just the way that people bought groceries. Then came along Clarence Saunders, the main character here, with an idea that seemed absurd. And he admits later that it wasn't his invention per se, that this was happening in other categories, and it had even happened in grocery stores, but it hadn't been sort of standardized and rolled out at a big scale. But his idea was to let customers serve themselves. So no clerks, no delivery, no phone orders, no charge accounts. And even the name Piggly Wiggly was just sort of this absurd sort of mockery of the entire category. And the point here is that we can relate back to today is that all innovations at the time when they come out sort of confront what's considered standard behavior when they first launch. So consider Amazon. It was initially, Jeff Bezos convincing investors that people would take out their credit cards and put their credit card information on the internet in order to buy books. That just seemed so outlandish at the time. It also seemed outlandish for Instacart to have a third-party shopper going and picking out your bananas for you. And people thought, well, no one's going to want to have groceries that someone else has picked out. That's ridiculous. Now, this is a survivorship bias inherent in this topic, certainly. Not all new inventions work out by any stretch. And indeed, Clarence Saunders himself had a spectacular failure of innovation at the end of his career. So even he didn't get everything right. But it is important as innovations come out to suspend your disbelief and remember that all innovations looked crazy at first. The second big theme I drew out from this book was around macroeconomic forces and how important the fundamental economic operations of a company are as the economy is moving through different cycles. So Saunders launched Piggly Wiggly during World War I when food prices were soaring. And what's important to know is that the innovation that he brought to bear wasn't just about convenience, it was about restructuring retail economics. This was a vastly more streamlined operation. He got rid of clerks picking every item. He got rid of delivery services. He got rid of charge accounts, which would often not get paid. And in doing so, he slashed the operating costs of his stores from 15% to 4%. So massive restructuring of a cost basis. And he passed those cost savings on to customers as well. And this was a big differentiator for Piggly Wiggly, was a lot of the items were priced much, much lower than they were at competitors. The efficiency also allowed him to stock 4 times the variety of groceries compared to traditional stores. And his system was so effective that even the US Food Administration officially commended Piggly Wiggly for helping ease price inflation problems in the grocery sector. So today we have similar economic forces at work. We've got consumers pulling back on spending because of a real or perceived threat of recession. We've got price inflation. Consumers are looking for alternatives. They've started to look to low-cost marketplaces like Temu and Amazon Haul. Just like consumers were willing to go and pick items for themselves off the shelves, something that other grocers thought was so outlandish, consumers today are willing to make a trade-off and wait a little bit longer to get items from China and for other things that they're getting in exchange as well, like the thrill of the hunt, all in service of lower prices. And a related thing here is just like Saunders found a new business model to combat inflation and labor costs, retailers are turning now to retail media networks with their huge profit margins to offset their thin retail margins and fund digital transformation. So the parallel here is that economic pressures drive innovation in retail business models. The third theme I'll cover really quickly is around the self-service revolution and how it continued on beyond Piggly Wiggly. Saunders didn't just remove clerks from the store environment, he created a standardized store layout that guided customers efficiently through their shopping journey. There was clear pricing tags, there were organized aisles, a logical flow. Shopping was a different experience. It was less chaotic, it was cleaner. Customers could discover products on their own terms and know that they were getting the same price as the shopper behind them. And so self-service continued on this onward march after Piggly Wiggly, of course. Now we've got self-serve at checkout for years now. We're scanning through our own items. So what's next? Well, I think we're seeing the next evolution of this self-guided discovery with AI shopping assistants, Amazon's Rufus and Perplexity's shopping engine. These are new frontiers where AI is helping customers in product discovery and decision making. So I want to bring this conversation back to the present day, and this is something that's unfolding right now. In drugstores today, merchandise is being locked up. We know customers don't like it, and the CEO of Walgreens just this week acknowledged that locking up basic items leads to lower sales, but they plan to continue doing that anyway. In related news, their partnership with Cooler Screens has sparked a lot of interest because these two parties are going to court and suing each other. I think the thing that is lost there is that these Cooler Screens while they were going to deliver a little bit of advertising revenue to Walgreens, generally not very popular for the customer. People want to see what's in stock and inspect items. And so this technology didn't seem to be very customer friendly. It was really in service of ad revenue. And I think this is what's helpful about studying history, particularly retail history, is the irony in some things that we're seeing play out today. What do we deem to be convenient for customers? Is that really accurate? Real innovation in retail means removing friction for customers and not adding to it. And so for today's retail leaders and e-commerce leaders, I think the lesson here is what seems crazy today might be standard practice tomorrow. And the key is recognizing fundamental shifts in consumer behavior and having the courage to build for them, even when others are doubting you. Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Retail Media Breakfast Club. We meet here every day at 6 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe and get your daily dose of insights, trends, and hot takes in the world of retail media and marketplaces.